Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Historia Politica Publica. This is the second episode of the series about Final Fantasy VII. In the previous episode I talked about the three main bodies of the game, which is Avalanche, Sephiroth and Sinra. Also talk about some of their characters like Barret, Aerith, the ethical dilemmas that they face during the story, the role of Cloud. And I finished the episode talking about Cosmo Canyon, which is like a kind of metaphor for the origin and the end, and how this end can bring a new beginning. Because at Cosmo Canyon, Avalanche was founded, you have probably the wisest intellectual in the whole world of Final Fantasy, which is Bugenhagen. Also Red 13, who decides to end his adventure with Avalanche there, but eventually he decides to keep going with them in order to defeat Sinra and Sephiroth. So in this episode I want to talk about why there are some people in the planet that are supporting Sinra, whereas others are against it. This is a kind of Manichaean world in which some people are in favor of capitalism and some others are against it. We can see in the remake of Final Fantasy VII this idea very explicitly developed when Barret is talking with a kind of worker of Sinra, and Barret is telling him like, why do you work for this evil company who is gradually destroying our planet? And the reply that he's got is something like, well, I am just a worker, I need to pay money, pay my taxes, so I mean, I am doing something which is good for me and my loved ones, and I will keep doing that. This conversation is very interesting, in fact, because if you think people nowadays that are working on companies which are being toxic for the planet, like people working in the oil companies, mining, and so probably if you face them, they will let you know that they need to earn a salary to survive, and they are completely right. It's like you cannot look upon them with a kind of moral superiority because you are doing a job which is less kind of nosy for the planet. So the thing here, it is not blamed just an individual by itself, but rather the whole system. And precisely this is what Avalanche wants to change the material conditions in order that it won't be necessary anymore to extract macro energy from the earth, but rather to establish a different society in which the wealth will be distributed. Because as we've seen in Final Fantasy, there are areas which are very rich, whereas others they are very poor, and most of them are because of Sinra. In that sense, we have many examples. So if we go to North Corel, which is hometown of Barret, this is very interesting area to explore because, well, first of all, Corel, it is a clear reference to Korea. You have North Corel, and the place where South Corel should be established, this is Gold Souther. When the main characters of Avalanche go there to North Corel, Barret finds a destroyed city as he remembers. And everybody start to blame Barret because according to them it was his fault that North Corel is like that. And in fact somebody, I think, punched him in the face, but Barret doesn't defend himself. And when the other members of Avalanche goes there to ask for explanation, Barret says, listen, it is totally my fault, I accept my responsibility. Why so? Because in the past, Barret and Dine, which was his best friend, they joined some of the Sinra members who wanted to create a reactor in North Corel. Sinra has done this over all the planet, as I mentioned in the previous episode. The rationalization behind that is that Sinra wants to extract the energy mako from different areas of the world and will help the different societies to develop. Obviously, the clear analogy is like when the colonizers in the past, but more in the area of after 1950s, 1960s neocolonialism, when even though the European settlers have abandoned those areas, they still have left their own kind of loyal workers. Like the elites are still part of the colonies because they have studied in the best universities in Europe. In that sense, they are able to kind of keep providing the previous settlers with the economic means. Mireille Fanon, which is the daughter of Frantz Fanon, gives a great example. Like when she said, listen, the World Bank is based in Africa and the workers are from Europe. Henceforth, they will move the economy in a way that will benefit their continent. So this is what Sinra wants to do in those areas like Gongaga, Nibelheim, North Korea, and so on. What happened in North Korea? That there is a failure in the system and the reactor explodes. Obviously, this can happen because the kind of extracting Mako is a very risky kind of activity. And in that sense, because Barrett was in favor on doing that and Dine was opposing this, but at the end, he was the only one to do that. So when the reactor exploded, the Sinra members believe that it has been a terrorist act by the members of North Korea. If we see how just recently there have been controversy about the blowing up or the Nord Stream pipe that happened months ago, and everybody in the Western media blamed Russia for doing that. Even though Biden last year mentioned that they will be willing to blow up this Nord Stream because it was providing with gas from Russia to Europe. In that sense, recently, the great journalist Amos Hertz has published an article in which, with the help of an anonymous source, he's telling that the Nord Stream was blown up by the United States. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that the United States has done something similar in order to provoke a conflict. We see that in Cuba in 1898, with the blowing up of the Maine in order to have a legitimacy to destroy the Spanish in Cuba. Also, and there has been other moments in history which, even though they have not been confirmed, you can expect that maybe they have instigated an attack in order to proceed. So then Sinra now has the legitimacy to destroy North Korea, and they start to kill everybody, and you have how Sinra destroys North Korea, which eventually becomes just dust and fire, and almost everybody dies. And when we avalanche goes in the future, the town is destroyed, but very close you have Gold Souther. Gold Souther is the place where capitalism has imposed all the resources in order to enrich the area. You have recreational activities, lights, music, and everything is fine. And it is interesting because when you are in North Korea, you can reach Gold Souther through a kind of air train, and Barrett say, oh, come on, how are you so kind of superficial, so greedy that you want to go there to enjoy yourself while here people are starving? Because to go there, you need to pay a money that the people in North Korea, they don't have it. So they can not even go to kind of evade themselves for their crunchy reality. In that sense, I think Aries or something like another card, they say, okay, but we need, to stop to think for a while. And this is a great metaphor of what capitalism does. Like, even though your life is very bad, you are working so much and you live under miserable conditions, you will always have this kind of entertainment close to you, like Netflix, movies. You can go out and take a beer and so on. This kind of idea that the humans, because they are so exploited, they need, in order to avoid that, they join together to plan a kind of different system or instigate a rebellion. They will need to be content with the kind of most superficial leisure activity. So, and Gold Souther represents South Korea in that way because South Korea was financed by the United States and is one of the most Americanized societies in the world, while North Korea is a dictatorial regime. You have a very poor society and they are just separated by the kind of frontier. And it's interesting because South Korea was a dictatorship until 1985, but did not even stop them to become rich, because at the end, what does it mean? What does it care if you live under a dictatorship, but another country is giving you money for free, like United States to Korea, in order to avoid the spread of communism? So in that sense, and even in Gold Souther, if you are punished, you go to the prison of the desert, where basically you cannot escape. And this is interesting because you can only escape if you win a race with the Chocobo, which are these animals that are very symbolic of Final Fantasy. But in order to compete in that race, you need a special permission. So this is one of the lies of the kind of free market individual idea, that if you desire it so much, you can achieve everything you want, because to participate, you don't need to be the best or the smartest, or or have like the most empathy in the world. No, you need to gain the favor of the people who can sign to you in doing so. So when you are in the prison of the desert, basically everybody say, listen, give up, surrender, you won't ever escape from here, in that sense. And precisely this is very interesting, and I think in the TV show, the how was the Squad Game, the Korean TV show, is very clear about that okay, you need to be the best in order to survive, but in order to go there, you need a kind of a special permission, and you need to be so miserable, so willing to do anything, that you will participate. Or like in the Hunger Games, where everybody is fighting against each other and just one will reach the eternal salvation. Same as in the race of Chocobo. If you win the Chocobo race, you will be free. But what about the others? And probably there are very great race kind of people in the desert which are not willing to participate because you need a special permission. So living Korea, which again, North Korea is North Korea and Gold South is South Korea, we have also other areas which are very interesting and many characters which I think give a great insight for the game. There are other many cities that are really interesting to analyze, but again, it is I will encourage you to play the game because it is very interesting and you have many contemporary similarities that you can delve upon it. Other characters, apart from the already mentioned like Cloud, Red Dead 13, Barret, Tifa, or Aerith, you have Kite Seed, which is this person who you meet in Gold Souther. Remember the place where everything is very superficial? It is very appropriate that you have the traitor in the group there, because he's working for Sinra, even though inside Sinra he's the best guy without any doubt, which is Rui, this guy that is always having ethical dilemmas about what Sinra is doing around the world, why they are destroying the reactors, because in Midjar, in order to kind of capture Avalanche, they are willing to destroy the reactor number 8. This is crazy because they know that Avalanche is based in the Sector 7, but they don't know where exactly they are based. So they want to blow up a whole reactor, that this reactor will fall down in the whole area. Again, as I mentioned in the previous episode, the reactors are on top, the upper class live on top, and the poor people, they live in the slums, like in the below area of Midjar. So the Sinra guys, they know that they blowing up this reactor, everybody will die, but they don't really care because they just want that the Avalanche kind of members go there to try to stop this, and they succeed in their goal because they capture Aerith and also they destroy the reactor. They blame on Avalanche and they kill like a lot of people and destroy the houses of many more. This is very important, and the role of propaganda is fundamental for this story, because Sinra has been able to blame Gutai, has been able to blame Avalanche because they control the media, they have the resources, and in order to do so, they are able to manipulate the population. Fundamentally, Kaisit, again, Reef. Kaisit is like the figure that is being controlled by Reef, like a kind of character, like white, big ball, with a cat on top who is controlling. So Reef is always with these dilemmas, like, okay, what are we doing is completely wrong. So eventually he will decide to stop to spy for Sinra. And obviously he will be in prison, and I don't know if he's executed for that. I don't remember if they tell that in the game, but this character realized that what Syndra is doing is beyond wars, and it is not to protect the people. Another character which is very fundamental for the story is Yuffie. Even though in the original story, Yuffie and Vincent, you cannot... it is not obligatory, mandatory that you take those two characters, but Yuffie symbolizes the spirit of rebellion of Gutai. Gutai is a small kind of town which was at war with Sinra. Gutai, it is characterized because they wanted to implement an alternative model of subsistence. So they don't use technology which can contaminate the environment, they don't use kind of fire weapons, they want to live in a kind of more sustainable area. Gutai is like a kind of Buddhist ideological based place, and when you go there in the future you will see how they have this kind of oriental pagodas. They believe they have a mountain where they can go to do meditation and so on. So the influence of Buddhism are clearly implemented in that area. So Midjar, because they see how this system is working well, they cannot let them spread their ideals all over the world. So they need to destroy them by force. Gutai, obviously, it is a reference to Cuba. In the sense that Cuba, after the revolution of 1959 led by Fidel Castro and Ernesto Che Guevara, Raúl Castro, Camilo Cienfuegos, and other warriors, they overthrew the dictatorship imposed by the US and wanted to create a socialist system. They put all the people to work together to take the decisions and so on. But what happened? Barely like 3 years later, the United States organized an invasion in Peaks Bay, which failed strepitously because the Cubans defend themselves. But from then on, the United States imposed a blockade in Cuba, which still is imposed until now, in 2023. And this destroyed the Cuban experiment of create a socialist society. So the same happened with Gutai. Gutai, after the war with Sinra, they kind of their resources were destroyed, and they were not able to keep kind of enhancing their philosophy to establish an egalitarian society. So when you go to Gutai, it's interesting because it has become a kind of holidays resort. People, the economy is surviving because you have people like the Turks from Sinra, which are going there, spending money and so on. Even Yuffie, which is the character who is from Gutai, she wants to steal your materia, which is like these spheres which let the main characters to do magic, to kind of summon the great forces and so on. So very fundamental for the story. And it is interesting because here it shows again the different philosophical approach. When you go to Gutai and you steal your materia in order to help the population, you could think that, okay, Yuffie at the end is a kind of Robin Hood stealing to the people who have more wealth in order to give to those more in need, like a kind of anarcho-communist idea. But the thing is, like, when Yuffie tells this to Cloud says, listen, I don't care about you or your little town. Just give me back my material. Cloud, again, is kind of pragmatic character, the main character, which was soldier before, even though he's evolving across the story and is showing more empathy eventually, but still he's very possessive about his property. So you have here this class. At the end, it's true that because Cloud likes Yuffie a lot, like as a main college and so on, is willing to risk himself to save her, but eventually we don't know what happened with Gutai. Although the father of Yuffie at the end tells Yuffie, listen, go with them in the adventure, and when they finish the adventure, probably they won't need any more the materia. You can ask them to give to you, and you can say, okay, nice, that is a good plan. So we can expect that this is what happened at the end of Final Fantasy VII narrative. But Wutai is a very interesting place in that sense, because you see the contrast between Wutai and Midjar. In the remake, they speak much more about Wutai, and always with this kind of propaganda in the screens, like, oh, you know, I think they say that the bombs in the reactors have been posed by this kind of terrorists from Gutai and so on. Obviously, Gutai, as Cuba in the real world, has been subject to propaganda from the media all the time, and in that sense, it is a clear reference to that area of the world. Gutai also is very far away, like in a kind of this area which there is good weather, and the relation with Cuba is perfectly clear in that sense. And obviously, again, like the mountain, you have this whole figure that it could symbolize the Buddha. So you have a society with Buddhist ideals, which anarchism has drink a lot of that, the idea of socialism, of being in harmony with nature and so on. And in that sense, this is fundamental for the story. So when Avalanche is there, they are amazed about how Sindragain has destroyed another area. And I will finish here the episode because I realize that there is still a lot to talk about it, and I want to talk about Vincent, Sid, Rufus, the new president of Sinra, and other areas like Gongaga, and other places which I think make sense to understand more the story of Final Fantasy VII.